Hello, Hope Congregation. I just want to let you know how exciting our Hope Kids Sunday School is right now. We are having an amazing year with our kids ages kindergarten through 12th grade. We currently have 3 classrooms going. Kindergarten through 2nd, 3rd grade through 5th grade, and then 6th grade through 12th grade. And we have some amazing teachers who keep our children engaged. And every single Sunday, if you walk down the hallway, you can see the engagement with the children. They're all talking about whatever they need to talk about. Hope Kids provides a safe space for children to be, and we have all of our wonderful teachers and support staff who are Hope Protection Policy certified, so the children are safe at all times, and it's just a wonderful space to be in. And so we need more loving, caring volunteers to join our safe space, to join our Hope Kids Sunday School. We're always looking for more teachers, more people who enjoy doing crafts, people who want to volunteer in other ways, maybe in administration, things like that. But if you have your heart open to help kids to learn more about Christ and how He can help them in their lives, I implore you to come and join us. We have a great time. All of the teachers do such a wonderful job. All of our volunteer staff who help with check-in and crafts, they're just amazing people to work with. And so I implore you to join us. Parents, I implore you to bring your kids. We can't wait to teach as many kids as we can. We're so excited to see more and more coming every single Sunday. We are just overjoyed at getting to know who they are and know their faces and know their names and see how much they are really enjoying themselves and learning more about God. So parents, please bring your children. And parents, we need you too. We really would love to have you to volunteer as well. If teaching isn't your thing, it's okay. It's okay, we can do other things. With being in the classroom and just assisting or helping me with checking them in or checking them out, hanging with them in the chapel before Sunday school starts or after Sunday school ends. There's so many ways that you can help volunteer, so we really do need that help. And please know that we don't expect anyone to volunteer every single Sunday because we understand that you need to be spiritually fed as well and want to spend time in the service. So you would just let us know what your availability is. And that's how we do it, so that no one person gets burned out and that everybody is really excited to work for the betterment of our children.
All right. Good evening, everyone. There we go. All of my devices are a little slow. All right, there you are. So I see you in Facebook Live and see you in YouTube Live here. So just want to say good evening, everybody. We have certainly enjoyed our time together, and we will begin with prayer momentarily. All right. Let us pause to ask for God's blessing. Lord, for this day we do give you thanks. We thank you for all that you are, all of who you are, and all of who you call us to be. We pray, our God, that you will be with us as we explore concepts of freedom. And of course, we know that you call us all to be free, and that was your desire for us as your people and as your children. We know this because you told Moses to demand Pharaoh to let God's people go. And so we continue the quest of freedom, and we do so in Jesus' name, the great liberator. Amen. All right, good evening, everybody. First, let me say, coming off of a Sunday like we had this past Sunday was absolutely amazing and incredible. The Lord just moved that service in different directions, and we ended up having sort of a youth explosion, a youth dissension on the service, you know. So they gave their testimonies, they offered their life to Christ, they committed themselves to the church. We had a couple of young adults join as well. It was incredible. We were just almost in awe at the move of God. So much thanks to our congregation for making and creating a place that is welcoming to all people, and much thanks to Pastor Crane and his impact on our youth and what he is creating for them and how he is blessing them with his ministry. So today we're going to continue our journey. Actually, this is our last time, and of course the vision for this came as we celebrated 4th of July. What does it really mean to be free? What are the issues around freedom? Are we free as a people or are we not? How do we utilize the journey of the Israel people in terms of our own location? Where are we situated on freedom's quest and on freedom's path? Are we still with Pharaoh? Are we traveling to Canaan, or are we actually in Canaan? So some of us had different viewpoints about where we are as a people as we continue. We want to be clear, just a couple of disclaimers. Number one, we want to be clear that while this is a conversation that's situated around the liberation of people of color, that everybody is welcome, everybody is invited to participate and join, because we know unless everybody's free, no one is free. So we certainly believe that the only way to achieve freedom is the freedom of all people through the liberation of the oppressed, which we read in Luke's chapter, Luke's fourth chapter, how Jesus lays out his messianic work and his messianic mission in Luke 4. And he angered people and angered traditional, what I would paraphrase, church folk. They were ready to kill him on the spot, but Luke lets us know that he slipped in the midst of the crowd and they lost where he was. So we know that even Jesus has struggled with humanity to achieve freedom. And of course, that continues to be our quest. Tonight, what I want to kind of talk about is what it looks like. What do you think we might need to be free? What are the parameters of it? How do we achieve it? And of course, we're continuing to utilize, or at least I'm continuing to utilize, the book Imagine Freedom and its impact on our conversation tonight. And we are certainly blessed by her own witness and explanation as a millennial writer on what freedom means as it is unpacked among us. Let me be clear that what freedom is might look differently and feel differently based upon which generation you're in. Whether you're, Tesfamariam is Rahiel Tesfamariam has actually written an excellent book, and she writes as a millennial, and I think it's worth just having it as a look from their angle on what freedom could look like. And she also writes, I think, through the eyes of a womanist thinker, and what freedom also looks like in the context of black women. So let's unpack some of this, and we'll get her to help us with some of this as well. Again, I say greetings to you all. Looks like we have quite a bit of you in the room, and YouTube Live is well situated, and we're grateful for you. And Facebook Live, we say hello to you as well. I have thoroughly enjoyed just about 80 of you every week. It has been a rich blessing. So one of the things we want to look at as a possibility for freedom, and by the way, this is not a typical Bible study. This is a congregational study on the subject of freedom. Of course, we will utilize Scripture in the context of it, but we're also taking a socio-political look on what freedom might look like existentially in our day and in our time. One possibility, and you can write a couple of these down. One possibility we have to consider when we're looking at what it looks like to be free and what it means to be free is the possibility of self-determination. Self-determination, which is a person's right to chart their path and to pursue their path and to pursue their calling and to pursue who it is they think God has called them to be. It is grounded in human rights for persons to have self-determination. The challenge is that human rights are violated, often in the context of the United States of America. Human rights are violated, and so are the efforts at self-determination. Those too are violated. In what way, though? One is redlining. Can you really, really live where you want to live in the United States? And are you welcome in every neighborhood? And how are neighborhoods organized in such a way to ensure a particular group of persons are there, or a particular class, or a particular race? So throughout history, we've studied how this thing works. For example, a white community settles into a neighborhood, and we saw a lot of this as black people were really expanding and beginning to expand their own economic base and ability to move. So as black persons began to move into white neighborhoods, there were forms of resistance. The white community didn't like that. I remember seeing a clip about it, and one person said, one white woman mentioned, "I know my rights." And that was an interesting concept, because does your right mean that this person doesn't have a right to move in the neighborhood because of their skin color? So white community develops, businesses invest in that community, they start their own businesses there. But as soon as sometimes we've seen throughout history, sociologically speaking, when a black family moves in, the worry is that the property value goes down. And as other black persons move in, then you have a sociological phenomenon called white flight, and they move perhaps in suburbia or in the urban environment. It goes back and forth. And as they move out, white businesses divest. They close up shop and they leave, right? And the property value continues to go down, making it even more so perhaps for persons of lower economic status and brackets to move in, and now it becomes a black neighborhood. And the black community or the Latino community or the Asian community, they go in and they build community. They take over some of the churches that were once white, some of the businesses, they reorganize those. And when they move out of that setting, they go to better places to live in many cases. And where are those better places? They're often where white people are occupying them. And so there is a going around of a circle that takes place every 30 to 50 years. I know the neighborhood I grew up in Washington, D.C., known as North Michigan Park, was a largely white neighborhood. And my grandparents moved in that neighborhood in 1958. And by the way, just an interesting fact here, in 1958, that house was $14,000, and today it is well over $500,000. A very small house, well over $500,000. And we're seeing that the white community is returning in the urban environment. And after the crash in 2008, when people were getting a lot of loans and selling houses, they weren't able to afford them. They lost those homes in many cases, and folks swooped in, bought them, built them, renovated them, and sold them for twice as much, which precludes some of the folks who were there originally to move back in. So it's a cycle that folks aren't really always able to have some sense of self-determination because they don't have access to economic advancement. And the thirst is to have access to those things, not given to them, but they want to work as well. They want to build their business as well. They want to, rise as well, but in many cases that opportunity is not given. And that's why there had to be affirmative action, not for the simple purpose of hiring people who were not qualified for a particular work, but to make sure that those who were qualified were given an opportunity. And now that's abolished, and we'll talk a little bit about that soon. So redlining is one of the harmful ways that people aren't able to experience self-determination, and it still happens today. Loan discrimination is another problem that still happens today. The targeting of black freedom fighters, black organizations, Black Lives Matter, other things are ways in which self-determination is limited, because not only do you not have, in many cases, equity and equality, but you are deterred from fighting for those things. And fighting for those things become a nuisance, become a burden to the larger society. So those things have to be shut down. We see the education and the housing inequalities. We see how education and educational institutions are under attack. We see how enrolling in colleges is on a decline of African American people, and it's also on a decline of African American men. Not just private white institutions, but even some of our historically black colleges and universities are seeing a steep decline in enrollment, especially among young black men. And when you don't have access to education, you lose, in some ways, self-determination. So while education climbs, and even our black colleges now very, very expensive, and while governmental support around student loans and grants seem to be being dismantled or limited, honestly, people just don't have, in many cases, an extra $2,000 to $5,000 a month to pay for a college education for their children. And God help if it's more than one child. So when you don't have access to quality, substantial education, then you lose some sense of self-determination. All right? We are seeing also self-determination is complicated by folks still not being hired, folks still not given equal pay, folks still not being promoted. And who are, and I agree with the writer in this, who are some of the ones that are suffering the most? African American women, all right? Some of them are the last to be hired, the last to be promoted, et cetera. There was an instance where a white pastor from the evangelical church was getting on a plane, and he was honest. If he ever were on a plane, he did not want, and there was a black pilot, male or female, he was not going to fly on that plane. He did not want to be under the care of a black doctor and a black nurse, not because he's racist, because he says he's not racist, but he doesn't trust that they're qualified because they may be DEI hires. So he doesn't realize that classifying a whole group of black professionals as DEI hires is also a form of racism, when many of these had to go above and beyond some of their white counterparts just to be considered as average by some institutions and some practices. And also, he didn't realize the impact of African American influence on medical science and how much of which we enjoy in terms of health are the result of African American doctors and thinkers. So we have a long way to go, just overcoming perceptions, harmful perceptions, okay? We have a long way to go to make sure that we secure some sense of self-determination. Other ways that we're struggling with the impact of this, for example, I just read recently where the president has released the FBI documents of MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., and the FBI surveillance. And the family has asked that he not do that. Now the family is working hard to protect their father's legacy, their uncle's legacy in America. And I'm waiting, honestly, any day where somebody will recommend the repeal of the King holiday. That's kind of where we're moving, and we have to be honest about that, right? It's not pretty out here. And this is nothing we need to be afraid to talk about. This is nothing that we need to be alarmed with or heightened. This is our reality, and if we don't talk about it as a church, then who will? All right, so we look at the disparity of how blacks are treated in history, or how they are becoming to be treated in a historical context. For example, In addition to that, Martin Luther King's bust was moved out of the Oval Office. Okay, all right. So you move it and you stuff it somewhere in the White House, I guess, or throw it out in the garbage, I don't know. But these are some of the things that are taking place in the American landscape. A watering down of black presence, black influence to make the country what it is. We see this with Fort Lee, which was named in 2024 to Fort Gregg Adams. And General Gregg, Arthur Gregg, and Charity Adams, and of course Charity was highlighted in the movie 6888. That base, Fort Lee, which was originally named after Robert Lee, that base was named after Arthur Gregg and Charity Adams. We talked a little bit about this last week. And by the way, Arthur Gregg is the uncle of one of our dear members here, Ted Sims. And Charity Adams' brother was John Hurst Adams, who became a bishop in the AME church. And you remember her, if you saw the movie, talking about how she was a minister's daughter and she would never do what the chaplain came into the base accused them of doing and being. So the base was named after, it was removed from Robert Lee, who was a Confederate general. Robert Lee was a Confederate general, and which means he was a traitor. And he abandoned the principles of the United States historically and wanted to raise a Confederate South, which was protective of the institution of slavery and discrimination, okay? So that name was taken down until the new administration comes in, and they changed the name from Fort Gregg and Adams to Fort Lee again. But this time they were able to find somebody other than Robert Lee to name this as Fort Lee, and they found a gentleman, Fitz Lee, who was resourceful in saving folks in the Mexican-American War. So we are seeing the narrative, and there is a narrative that, and not just a narrative, but a reality that is happening with African-American people. All right? Then we're also seeing the slow removal of the black presence in American history and American history textbooks. Some of the new books don't even have a mention, for example, of Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, or anything about the civil rights movement at all. So that's a complete eradication from the black contribution to the American story. And in all honesty, you cannot tell the American story without telling the story of black people. You cannot, under any circumstances, not in any era. You cannot talk about the Declaration of Independence in 1776. You cannot talk about the Constitutional Convention in 1787. You cannot talk about any presidential election without talking about black people and their contribution thereto. So we're seeing the sense where we have to get rid of all of those things. Even in the Museum of African American History, some of those artifacts and some of those displays have been sent back to their owners because they seem to represent some element of wokeness or DEI, and the American government should not be funding those kinds of concepts. So that's kind of where we are when we are trying to reach some level of self-determination. Now we're not even able to tell our stories in the context of the federal government. So, you know, we have much work to do. Now let me pause and see what we have. Just want to make sure there aren't any questions, and it doesn't look like it. Do have a comment from Jill. Yes, stealing Black original ideas like the Black Panthers, feeding school children, then the government tries to say they came up with that. They came up with that. So, very good point. We'll talk about the Black Panthers momentarily, actually. All right. All right. Let's continue to look at how this conversation of freedom impacts everywhere else. Again, we have to look at even our international relations. We have to look at the Ukraine-Russian conflict. We have to look at the Israel-Gaza conflict. We have to look at the Israel-Iran conflict and the U.S.-Iran conflict, if you will, Pan-African conversations. We have to look at all of those. And part of it on the surface is, hey, we are encouraging all people, all nations to live into democracy because everything else is evil. All right, so we want everybody to live into a democratic form of government. Let the people choose what? Their self-determination. And that's what we're asking everybody to do, including, we would love, part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic was abolished, and they ventured into a democratic form of government. So we're seeing that just because a government is democratic, that does not mean that it is absent of evil. And all forms of democratic governments can be tainted with, because democracy is always vulnerable to being tainted with and exploited and misused, all right? So when the U.S. encourages and pushes for other countries to live into democratic principles, they have to do so while remembering that they themselves might be democratic, but they're living into voter suppression, money and fiscal interests, and a political process between two parties that can't seem to advance the cause of freedom for all people. That is the real struggle. That is the real challenge. All right? So I want to show a clip here called We the People, and I just want to use this as a concept of expanding some of our thought. That's what we're doing. We're expanding our thought. We're just looking and reviewing possibilities as it relates to the concept of freedom. Marcus, do you think do we have that one?
Now, when I heard that, as a Native man, I had to stop and ask when. I've read our founding documents, I've studied our history, and I had to question, when did we decide as a nation that we the people actually means all the people? Literally 30 lines below the statement, all men are created equal, the Declaration of Independence refers to natives as merciless Indian savages, making it very clear the only reason our founding fathers used this inclusive term, all men, because they had a very narrow definition of who was actually human. Now, a few years later, our founding fathers wrote another document. They started this one with the words, we the people of the United States. This, of course, is the preamble to the Constitution. However, if you read just a few lines later, down to Article 1, Section 2, section of the Constitution that defines who is and who is not covered by this Constitution, The first thing you will note is it never mentions women. Second, it specifically excludes natives. And third, it counts Africans as 3/5 of a person. So who's left? Well, white landowning men is who could vote. Now we have to ponder this for a moment. The reason our Constitution was written, the purpose of our Constitution is to protect the interests of white landowning men. So today we act shocked that women earn 70 cents to the dollar. This shouldn't shock us. Our Constitution is working. We act surprised that our prisons are filled with people of color. This shouldn't surprise us. Our Constitution is working. We act outraged that in 2010, the Supreme Court sided with Citizens United and rules that corporations now have the same rights to political free speech as individuals. This is what opens the door for super PACs, unlimited contributions to candidates. This shouldn't surprise us. The Constitution's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's protecting the interests of white landowning men. So this makes our Constitution a systemically white supremacist and sexist document that assumes the white landowning male has the authority to decide who is and who is not human. See, we would rather believe that the United States of America is racist and sexist and white supremacist in spite of our foundation. But the truth is we are white supremacist, racist, and sexist as a nation because of our foundations, and we don't know what to do with that. There's an Aboriginal leader named George Erasmus, and he says where common memory is lacking, where people do not share in the same past, there can be no real community. If you want to build community, he says, you have to start by creating a common memory. I think this quote is brilliant, and it gets to the heart of our nation's problem with race, which is we don't have a common memory. We have a white majority that remembers a history, a mythological history of discovery, expansion, exceptionalism, and opportunities. And we have communities of color that have the lived experience of stolen lands, broken treaties, slavery, Jim Crow laws, segregation, boarding schools, ethnic cleansing, genocide, internment camps, mass incarceration, and families separated at our borders. We have no common memory, and I think we all can agree that community on a national level is absolutely in the pits. I'm proposing that the United States of America needs a national dialogue on race, gender, and class. A conversation on par with the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that took place in South Africa, in Rwanda, and in Canada. If we can acknowledge the vile racism, sexism, colonialism, and white supremacy that our founding fathers embedded deep into our foundations, we might just be able to leave a different legacy for our children's, grandchildren's, grandchildren's, grandchildren. A legacy that for the first time, we the people might actually mean all the people. In the State of the Union, President Obama was talking about the need in our nation for new politics. And he said,
"We the people." Our Constitution begins with those three simple words.
All right.
Words we've come to recognize mean all the people, not just some.
All right. We've seen that laid out for us, and it's pretty much difficult to argue against. And one of the things I had hoped to achieve with this conversation is just that, a conversation around the subject of race, gender, class, and perhaps getting our memory straight. But we can't all have common memory when we are being intellectually negligent, intellectually dishonest about what our true story is. When we're trying to withhold the story so that others might know. When we're trying to preserve a system that is actually unequal. It's hard to think because even, we were all raised to almost adore the Constitution like it's an incredible doctrine of liberation, and only to find that it is not. It is flawed. It represents the deep thoughts of those who wrote it. We the people did not mean everybody while we the people was existing in the context of slavery. There's no need in getting mad about it. It's just the reality of it. We the people did not mean the thousands of people that were transported here from West Africa and other places. It didn't go for them. They didn't earn the right. And then there were efforts to try to take them back in the 1920s. We're done with you. You can go back and you can build your own places of equality like we have here. It's horrible. So I think, when we look at some of these concepts of self-determination and how we're treating other people, we have to be honest about what we're seeing. We all can't see a blue sky and have variations of colors in terms of what we see. Even Roe versus Wade, nobody wants an abortion to have to take place, but you take self-determination away from a woman when you determine what she can and cannot do. I'm not arguing any of that. I'm not even getting into the theological aspects of it. That's a conversation we can have in another time. But in the meantime, we have to be honest that there are many socio groups and subgroups in the American landscape that do not have self-determination. And women are one of them. Families are one of them. All right? So what does it look like? And where are we going? Number one, this concept of common memory intrigues me. That is the goal, where we're all being truthful. As Donna says, we're all moving toward truth over lies. So no need to lie, and there's no need to hide a truth from people who need this story. If we're miseducating people intentionally, the United States will continue in a cycle of racism, classism, misogyny, and any other kind of hatred you can think of. When we desensitize people from the horror of lynching and slavery and police brutality and redlining and inequality, nobody will ever want to fight for that which is equal. So what do we do in the meantime? One of you mentioned the Black Panther Party. And you know what? If the Black Panther Party was interesting, I wouldn't say it had the righteous, pure kind of effort that the civil rights movement had. I mean, the Black Panther Party, they were radical. They meant what they said. They were very intentional about protecting the citizens. And there are many things about the group of these young people, these revolutionaries, that are worth us taking a note of. And one thing I got to give them credit for, and some of you all may have been Black Panthers or had friends that were Black Panthers, or some of you all may have dated Black Panthers, and there are a couple of really good films out about Black Panther, and if you've not checked any out, it's a good thing to do. But here is one thing they did. They imagined how to provide for their own community without dependence on the federal government or without dependence on the majority. These folks came up with free breakfast on the weekends, and in some cases during the week. They came up with health clinics. They came up with employment referral services and legal clinics. They found ways to provide for the communities they were in. And this is what the church especially must find a way to do, to always provide, to always recognize need, and to see how we together can hear the question that Jesus asked: how can we feed these? There were 5,000. And the disciples, one of them said, look, there's only 2 fish and 5 loaves that this kid have. Make the people sit down, because what we can do together far outweighs what we can do individually. And Jesus continues to ask us the question, how can we feed all those that are here? Not just bodily food, but mental food. How can we add and contribute to their own sense of health and wholeness? Especially when access to health care is about to be real limited. Especially when support of medication acquisition is about to be real limited. Somebody was telling me they had a medication that was $4,000 a month, and they got support to get it down to 20 to 50%, but $2,000 a month was still incredibly high, and they couldn't make it. That is not having self-determination medically. So how do we address that? How do we gather some form of political power? Not the kind of power to boss people around, but the power to let people go, as Moses told Pharaoh. All right? God demanded the liberation of God's people. So how do we get access, friends, to quality and nutritious food? How do we protect our communities from pollution, infestation, waste, lead, asbestos? And look, check it out. How do we protect our communities from toxic water and toxic water systems? How do we keep our communities safe from environmental threats? When so many people are saying environmental threats, those things are hoaxes. Those things are not real. Climate control is not real. Any threat to climate scenarios are not real. Yet, who remembers Hurricane Katrina? And who did Hurricane Katrina impact the most? And who did those floods impact the most? These national disasters typically impact people that cannot afford to rebuild. How do we equip our millennials, for example, from not being prepared for green-collar jobs? Of course, we understand green-collar jobs to be jobs situated around stability and sustainability, economically, environmentally, politically. And there are plenty of green job opportunities. And how do we equip our kids to get ready for that? How do we take seriously the scenario around what is becoming the result of Project 2025? And then I'm gonna let y'all go for the evening, because I want you to hear this. We've talked about it before, but Project 2025 is a document that is guiding much of American government, ideology, and philosophy. It is a real project that's up and running, organized by the Heritage Foundation with a $22 million yearly budget. It's about 3 years old, while the thinking of this has been in motion for over 50 years easily. What are some of the things that Project 2025 is doing to interfere with concepts of self-determination, concepts of liberty, concepts of political power of black people? What are some of the things? Number one, or not necessarily in order, but gutting abortion access is one of their aims. They're utilizing a 19th century law, the Comstock Act, to ban any abortion medications and materials, preventing materials from being sent through the U.S. Postal Service, plus the reversal of the FDA's approval of mifepristone. Those are just some of the ways in which they make sure that abortion gets to die. And I concur that, nobody wants to see an abortion. Nobody, I don't know, really is excited to go have one. But if you're going to be pro-life, you must engage in the eradication of poverty for people. You must at least help people with all-day kindergarten, for example. Free lunch. You're taking away free lunch from people. You're dumping extraordinary expenses on the educational institution on some states that can't afford to hire speech pathologists. They can't afford to hire special educators and special education needs and aids for students. They can't afford some of those things. So you can't just run around, can you, and eradicate abortion without also making sure that there are systems in place that protect and watch out for vulnerable children. We can't even keep them safe in the classroom. And I'm not saying these are reasons to have one. I'm just saying don't be incomplete with your advocacy. If you're going to advocate for all of it, not just birth. This concept of mass deportations from Project 2025, where you want to target immigrant communities with raids, this quest to end birth citizenship, to separate families without sensitivity, does that not sound familiar? Separating families. I know it happened on slave auction blocks in the 16 and the 1700s. Dismantling systems of asylum. Okay, we see that. Abusing warrantless surveillance, exploiting the executive branch's vast and unprecedented power to spy on people, to dismantle guardrails that prevent the president from abusing the executive branch's power. Are we not watching this right before our eyes? That is right. Some abortions are medically necessary. Donna mentions this, and they are. But it's not my business to determine which ones are and which ones are not. That's between a family and a doctor. You know, this is what I'm trying to convey. We have to stop being so judgmental when we don't always know what the problem is. Also, Project 2025 supports the unleashing of undue support for fierce force on protesters. So to do that, you got to violate the First Amendment to target journalists and protesters. You got to, again, dismantle guardrails that prevent the president from abusing this executive power. Here's one: severely limiting voting access. Abuse executive powers to interfere in elections by criminalizing the voting process and damaging fair representation. Project 2025 supports censoring critical discussions in classrooms. Academic discussions about race, gender, and systematic oppression. Everybody is afraid of critical race theory, for example, and they have no idea what it is, and they have no idea that it is actually a graduate, an undergraduate level conversation. Nobody's studying critical race theory in the first and second grade. Nobody. That's not a part of any curriculum. But there are folks running around, we got to get rid of this critical race theory, and you don't know what it is. This is why education is necessary. And while there's a Project 2025, some of us need to be working on Project 2026 and Project 2028, where equality and equity is the way of the land. It states it in the Constitution. We have to live up to it. We have to live up to it. So, my friends, the last point I want to say is a lot of this is undergirded by a theory called Christian nationalism. And Christian nationalism suggests that, and Project 2025 suggests that we have to get back to a place where the American family is the bedrock in the center of American government. Husband, wife, a child, 2 kids, 3 kids, a station wagon, a dog, and a white picket fence. That should be the American experience. And I'll say, okay, I'm all right, based on what scripture though. If you're coming from a Christian context and you follow a Lord who was single and who raised the question, who is my mother and who is my father, what makes you think that the family should be the bedrock of a governmental entity? And what is your definition and understanding of family? Because family means many things. And for us as a people, it really means many things. It means sometimes we reach out and we take on children that are not our own. Are we not family too? It means sometimes the grandmother and the grandfather have to step in and support where mothers and fathers are just not able or are not present. The time for us is to wake up and claim freedom, my friends. Freedom of all people, not just a group. Freedom of all people, because there's enough freedom to go around, and there's enough love to go around, and there's enough peace to go around. We don't have to live in a scarcity mindset that if I let somebody else have some, then I won't have any. All right. I will close with those thoughts for you to unpack and to think about. How do we connect with our children, the neighborhood? How do we work for a power that uplifts and that leads people into self-determination and freedom, environmental freedom, biological, medical freedom, political freedom? All of those elements of freedom God is interested in this day. And the church might very well be the one entity that could transform the narrative into a narrative where justice, like waters of righteousness, rolls down as a mighty stream. That's in the book of Amos. So I leave that with you as we continue to live and unpack the work of freedom. Before we go, friends, I just want to say Again, thank y'all for hanging with me. Thank y'all for rolling with me. This has been a marvelous time of discussion. And let me just say, today, just a different subject here. But the black church has been a church where a lot of things happen. Number one, it's a church where we gather and worship. Historically, it's also a church where we unpack the experience of black people in healthy and holistic ways. And today we lost an icon. Today we lost an icon. And we salute Malcolm Jamal Warner. I grew up with him, and so many of us grew up with him. And we thank God for his witness and for all that he brought us. It was through him that we were able to see ourselves on television. And so for his life, we give thanks, and we pray for his family, his wife and his daughter, and of course for all of us who loved him. Good night and God bless.